Just chatting.
I figured all that had been done, but
a little slow this
bad
morning.
introducer.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, guys. Well, we're live now, so we're just having a little conversation. Everybody seems to be stuck in Toronto, though. So, Sean, we need to sort of expand the worldwide view here.
We try. It's just cool people live in Toronto. What can I say?
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay. Anyway, so welcome to the Wikibrands Collective Webcast. This episode is Futureproofing, and we want to ask the question: what would innovation really be without being fit for corporate innovation as well? My name is Doyle Buehler, and we are the Wikibrands Collective Transformation Webcast. We are an on-demand collective of professional transformation talent that is rocking the boat on the wave of disruption. And this is the Wikibrands Collective Webcast Futureproofing episode about innovation fitness, how to increase your overall innovation health and competitiveness. Exactly. I'm delighted to be joined by our guests. I've got Samantha Yarwood from Toronto. I have Maggie Greyson, designer, futurist, writer, and co-founder of Futures Present. Or is that Futures Present? Margie will fill us in on the details. And we also have, of course, our good old standby, Sean Moffitt, Managing Director of Wikibrands, also in Toronto. All right, so let's meet our amazing guests. Samantha, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, nice to meet everyone. My name is Samantha Yarwood, and I am somebody who's been committed to creativity and innovation for the past 20 plus years of my career. I've had a lot of different roles, and everything from being an entrepreneur to an intrapreneur with a small organization you might have heard of called Starbucks. I spent 15 years there, and I love the topic that we're talking about today because it's obviously a very innovative brand, very innovative company. I had a series of roles with the organization, from finance to strategy, and most recently innovation. And where I've been positioned is in Toronto, but there is a little bit of an international arm for me because I did spend 6 years in Amsterdam as well as 3 years in Switzerland, where I had a chance to work on some super innovative projects. I left the organization just a few months ago, and I'm now in the process of taking on my most innovative and creative project ever, which is me, and what am I going to do with the back half of my life. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow. Cool. Margie, would you like to go?
It's actually Maggie, but that's okay.
My mistake.
Okay. It's Maggie Greyson, and I'm a designer futurist and co-founder of Futures Present. The company is a strategic foresight and design organization. Myself, I've been writing, working as a designer for the last 25 years across all disciplines: interactive, live performance, and advertising. Most recently, I'm part of a futurist community where I'm building scenarios, and I specifically focus on personal futures. So we believe that the future begins with you. And if we can help an individual to feel comfortable about the crazy future that's coming, then that helps them to make decisions down the road.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maggie. And last but not least, Sean Moffitt.
Hey, Doyle. We've done 20 of these, so hopefully we know each other by now for, I guess, the audience tuning in for the first time. I'm Managing Director of Wikibrands. We're an on-demand collective of future-proofing and transformation talent. And obviously, you can't go too far on those two fronts without talking about innovation and specifically corporate innovation. We're doing a lot of research, and certainly I'm excited about our panel today. I'm going to call this the enthusiastic team of our Wikibranders, because every time I talk to Samantha and Maggie, it's like I walk away feeling more enthusiastic about innovation and life in general. So I expect nothing less today.
All right. Fantastic. All right. And as I mentioned, I'm Doyle Buehler, based out of Australia, and run a strategic consultancy on digital transformation. All right. So let's get into talking about the topic. Start, from the fitness side. Why do corporates get lumpy and fat? Who wants to start? Maggie, you're closest to me.
Oh, well, sure. Geographically, I don't know, but
no, not geographically, but on the screen.
I think one of the things that happens with corporations is they're built to be rigid, and that's excellent for a time, but putting together a strategic plan can actually be quite brittle. And so really driving forward on that plan can be great in the moment. As a futurist, looking quite far into the future and then back, you end up getting a little bit more nimble and pliable because you don't know for sure that your plan is come to fruition the way you see it. So some of that comes with the rate of change in terms of staff, executive leadership, and so on. So you're sort of in the short-termism problem where making a decision way out into the future actually doesn't seem consequential, but making a short-term decision actually feels quite satisfying when it comes to fruition.
It's true.
Yeah, I think, Maggie, you touched on something there in terms of strategy. And I actually sometimes think strategy is the killer of innovation. And I think because we're taught to think about what is our goal, what is our vision, what is our mission, how do we need to deliver, that we end up focusing on the end results. And I think sometimes where that comes from is the desire to show achievement for an organization, where I've been toying with the idea of what if we actually got rid of that? What if we just looked at solving the problems at hand and somehow split out groups of individuals? So there is a team thinking about future trends, but it's not attached to the outcome of the organization. So I don't know the answer, but it's one of the things that I've been thinking about, having worked for an organization that I think can be pretty innovative, but sometimes get stuck in process as well as get stuck in the desire to meet the needs of the street.
But do you think that strategy would make you fat then over time, or?
I think it can, because I think sometimes leadership gets so attached to the strategy. And I also think there's an element of, and Maggie, I love what you said about it starts with the individual. And I think with organizations, it's exactly the same. And I think when new leaders come into the business, they want to leave their legacy and they want to leave their mark on the business. And sometimes that means delivering on a strategy. And I know we all fall into this trap where sometimes we're married to our own ideas, where we can't actually move away from them. And as that continues to build, I think as people get bought behind it, what ends up happening is they end up married to the ideas as well. And even when you want to change direction, the reality is, as much as we say we want innovation, as humans, we don't want to change. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think we get fatter.
Yeah.
Cool. Sean, what do you think?
It's so interesting. Every time we talk about a high-minded topic like technology or innovation, it always does come back to people, right? Like, we should be more psychologists than managers, I think, when it comes to most. You know, Doyle, we have all these great questions lined up about this topic, but it really comes down to people are strange beings, and sometimes we act kind of weird. And I think to echo the points just made, though, I think, you know, what got you there will probably keep you there is part of kind of your corporate upbringing, right? Like, if I got promoted within a certain way of doing things, then obviously I want to continue doing those things. And I think I have this model that gets companies in trouble. It's the incumbent model of the 4 I's, right? Like, if you are an infrastructure, an institution, an inventory, or an intermediary, you know, there's a lot of things that make you start to get lazy. You get too controlling, you don't add enough value for your customer, whole bunch of different things. And I think I'll use the metaphor of our fitness, I guess, right? Like, in sports, you know, how tough is it for teams to actually repeat in terms of a championship? It's brutal because you have a target on your back. And I think companies have the same problem. You have a target on your back, and at the same time, you get lazy and think, oh, we did that last year, we'll do it again. And it's not often the case in sports or business.
So when are the Toronto Maple Leafs going to make the Stanley Cup then? Are they being innovative enough?
Wow, I forget that even though you're from Australia, you do understand hockey. Yeah, so it's this year, Doyle.
Is it? Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not placing bets on that.
Nice.
So when do we need to kind of get serious then? When do companies, corporations need to say, okay, well, let's take this seriously. If we're going to actually do something, we're going to look in the mirror, we're going to find out, you know, what's going on. Are we going to die or survive? You know, where's this point? And are we getting closer to it so that we are fit?
It's funny because I think Sean touched on something, and I've often thought that the time when a company gets creative is when the performance isn't very good. But what I've also noticed is when a company is struggling, is the first thing we do is we look at what was working and let's do more of that. So I almost think there's some intersection between when the company isn't meeting its customers' demands, when it's not hitting its revenue targets, but also when the old way of working is no longer working. I mean, I would love to believe that a company is just going to start changing because it needs to, and because it recognizes that what's working today is not going to work into the future. But I think there's a reality where there needs to be some sort of crisis to spark a change.
Yeah.
I don't know, Maggie, what do you think?
I agree. I think that it's when someone else is stealing or extracting value that you have out there that all of a sudden you think, wow, how can I take back something that is, waste of line that I didn't see as monetizable, is when you have to do something really drastic in your sales, or in your production process or something like that, or when there's a resource squeeze of some sort. Putting your purpose in front of your profits. And sometimes that gets lost, right? It's exactly what you said, Sean, about staying, getting where you are, keep you where you are. And if we want to talk about metabolism and everything, if you're only doing the same amount of training and eating and stuff like that as you did in your 20s, and you do that again in your 60s, your metabolism is slowing down. So you're actually not addressing your new scenario.
Yeah.
The whole premise of fitness too, or not just fitness, but innovation and sales, as you're mentioning, is sometimes we don't actually, I mean, what is though that specific trigger that says, hey, we need to do something? I mean, you've probably all heard of the frog in the boiling water, or boiling a frog, or whatever it is, right? That gradual increase or decrease of sales over time, you may not notice it, but what is that one point where we say, hey, wait a sec, we really need to kind of put some action into this?
It's funny because we talked about this with scale-ups in a previous webcast, where it's like, when does a scale-up know it's no longer a startup? And I think the same thing maybe holds in corporate land, where it's like, when are you no longer kind of at the peak of what you do, and you really need to think about reinventing yourself? I think, I've been there before. I've been guilty of it, where, you can coast along for 2 or 3 years without kind of maybe having material impact on your bottom line. But it will, much like fitness, you don't work out 3 times a week for a number of weeks, number of months, you're going to get in trouble down the road, right? So I think, there's this crazy chasm between, I've got a Dell crisis moment over here where I know for sure I need to change, or I'm Google over here where it's just, they're so well ingrained in terms of learning and unlearning and relearning their business that it's almost second nature that they're going to change. There's this pendulum in between where I think a lot of executives don't know when that moment is. I don't know if you guys have had that experience where it's just like, you're talking to people and they should know they're in trouble and they just don't know.
And that's the problem. That's the big challenge, right? Because if you don't know, you can't really identify, is it a trend or is it just a blip?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but I think there's indicators along the way. I think with anything, there isn't that big aha moment of, now we need to do this. And one of the things that I do believe is the majority of let's say the corporate population typically has a feel for where the organization's at and what needs to be done, but we're not always listening to that and tapping into it. On top of that, if we really listen to our customers and what they were looking for, I think we'd get some really good indicators along the way around where we might need to shift our businesses. So I don't know that there's this one aha moment. I think there's many little indicators along the way. And it's just figuring out a way to listen to those better.
Yeah. Okay. Or sometimes it's an outside shot to the gut. Like I knew a guy who had a drone company, and Toronto just changed their rules. So his huge revenue generating drone company that would fly up and down development buildings in development. And he was no longer allowed to do that with the size of drones that he had. So all of his inventory, all of his staff, huge transition. And if he had an inkling that this might be coming down the pipe, then maybe his business wouldn't have had to pivot on the drop of a dime. That one is probably less predictable. But in some cases, it's patents ending or elections coming up, where you can maybe see the signs and not necessarily know how it's going to play out, but to get a few more eggs in your basket for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that external disruptor is sometimes something that you can't anticipate. But again, I do think there are indicators along the way, and to be prepared for, get ready to pivot, and that you might need to do something dramatically different.
Yeah. So I think that's probably where it seems pertinent to basically have like an innovation fitness program continuously, right? It's not really stopping and starting. It's okay, we need to be innovative continuously.
It's almost like having a personal trainer, right? It's well known. If you have somebody that A, you're going to show up on Tuesday and she's going to be there or he's going to be there, you're going to A, show up, B, you're going to want to perform better, C, they're probably going to be really good at guiding you. So I think, when it comes to innovation, sometimes it's good, to Samantha's point, like to have certainly a good pulse check in terms of what your customers are saying, but also having good external resources or networks that can actually tell you the honest truth of about what's going on. Because, inside corporations, sometimes bad news travels very, very slowly. And having some type of Switzerland outside saying, look, we're your friend, but man, you just gained 20 pounds and have a look at yourself in the mirror and really give a good hard check is important.
Yeah, completely.
Well, it's funny that you're calling them a friend. Like there's the personal trainer who has to be friendly. And if you have a friend that you're paying to tell you that you've gained 20 pounds, or a friend might not tell you that you've gained 20 pounds. So that kind of brings into like the therapist and all that stuff aspect of you can't have somebody rushing in and saying your building might be on fire, because they don't want to hear that. It doesn't go in. So there's a delicate balance of having an internal police force and then someone that's actually listened to.
Well, can I say that I'm just retaining water? Does that work at all?
Totally.
So
if you're pregnant, yes, Doyle. In your case, I don't know.
That's what I keep telling people. I'm just retaining water. But so what should we be doing? Should we get the sergeant major, or should we get like the friendly, soft skills consultant to kind of make sure that corporations are having this innovation fitness program?
So I think I'd say both. I think Maggie touched on that around, is it your friend? Is it somebody that, you're paying to be honest with you? And I almost liken it to having a team of people. If you're a professional athlete, you don't just have one coach. You might have one coach that's helping you with, if we use hockey, with your ice skills, another coach that's helping you with your stick skills, another coach that's helping you with psychology and visualization. And I don't think corporations are any different. So how do you bring together a team that can be, have all of the different points of consideration so you actually get different perspectives? Because I think that's actually part of the beauty of innovation too, is how do you actually create friction from a point of view to also spur other ideas?
I think friction's good. I think that it's funny. We're talking about this middle ground. I guess I'm in the same camp too, in a roundabout way, where it's just like, you want to know that the people you're working with have your best interest at heart. So at the very basis of what they're telling you, good, bad, or indifferent, it's like they want you to succeed. And I oftentimes find sometimes in agency lands, I'm not too sure if those agencies want their clients to succeed sometimes. It seems very ironic, but there's a culture mindset there. So I do think candor, but knowing that you have your client's best interest at heart is important. I do err on the side that, companies don't really hear the truth too often. So I put a high premium on consultants or boutique firms that can walk in and actually tell companies what they don't know or what they should know. I think too often service providers think they have to toe the company line, and it's doing a disservice to the people they're trying to serve.
Yeah, and I think on that too, it's not just a question of being able to tell in one moment. I think with any type of feedback or desire to change things, it's almost like you need to plant seeds. Because one thing that I've noticed is, like, even myself, I don't necessarily want to hear the idea or the solution or what we need to change right up front. But if you kind of lead me along a process and you start to, let's say, socialize the idea or the concept, I find that seems to work effectively too, where you're right. I think consultants do have that permission to be really direct. So how do you actually bring that into an organization?
Yeah. One of the things that I've been thinking about is the, I don't know, softly approach. So you have something with big fanfare, but you don't expect it to, change the company's culture in one day. Although it's a lot of fun. But on the other side, if you have something that is much more long-term and planting seeds, I love that expression, that you can sort of slowly creep up on culture that embraces failure and rapid prototyping that's done in-house. That's a resource thing for sure. Versus, farming out or hiring to your weaknesses outside of the corporate structure.
Yeah. And I think, Maggie, you touched on something else really important there, is that fear of failure part. I think that is actually the biggest hurdle to anything, is how do you create a culture where failure is acceptable, and also as a leader become comfortable with when your teams are failing, and what skills do you need to be able to coach them to understand what the learning is in there. And as much as I don't like this expression, but I do, it's fail fast and move on. Like, learn from it and move forward. And I don't think enough people or corporations do that.
But what if you're just fear of trying, though, like fear of attempting innovation? Like, how do you kind of get past that? And are there corporations out there, companies that they don't even want to try because they're scared of failure?
You're mining in a good area. I mean, I love this topic because I think this gets at you can read as much as you want about innovation, but in real terms, it's like, what have we touched on? Too many innovation firms come in and want to be the creative savior, to Samantha's point of view, as opposed to just seeding things and doing them collaboratively. Too many of them are probably young in what they're doing and don't provide the client confidence themselves. So to your point, Doyle, like, the fear of trying starts to become an issue. And then on the other side, the fear of failure becomes another one. You probably want somebody that's confident enough to know, yeah, there's an X percentage chance this isn't going to work either, right? Just such a soft and squishy art of innovation we have here, don't we?
Sure. Yeah. It always seems
like that, the art of innovation. Sorry.
Well, would you describe it as an art then, Samantha? Is there,
I really think it is. And, one of the things that I almost compare it to, outside of fitness, is a musical orchestra. I mean, you have a conductor and you have somebody who's pulling together all the bits of music and all the instruments and trying to create a magnificent piece. And each individual plays such a critical role in actually being able to manifest that piece in the way that's intended to. But you see good conductors and you see bad conductors. You see times where a conductor might get on stage and he's leading the orchestra, but they're not even paying attention to him and they're self-organizing. And then there's other times where you can tell that the orchestra is really listening to each other and also the conductor. So that's kind of the way that I would liken it in terms of it being an art. And I think it's beautiful when it all comes together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the idea of art because there is no perfect piece. There's no best painting. There's no perfect ballet. And the thing with each of those, you're rehearsing all the way along the way until you have opening night. And so what is the language around rehearsal and role play and detection and correction? And in the business world, we use prototyping as a way of doing it. But if we kind of look at version 1.0, version 2.0, each as not a finished product, but maybe as a prototype to the next product, we can maybe get into a feeling of there is no binary failure or success. It's we're doing this. What have we learned? We're doing this. What have we learned? Like, just ladder up.
Do you think, though, that we kind of get stuck in that, innovation 1.0, where technically I think a lot of corporations are looking for innovation 10.0 or 9 and aren't really prepared to kind of take those steps to go, well, okay, we got to get to step 1 and then 2 and then 3 kind of thing. We got to walk before we fly. Do you see that? Do you think that that's valid? Are we getting ahead of ourselves, basically wanting innovation 10.0 when we only have the capability realistically of 1.0?
It's a good one. I mean, startups get this, right? Like startups, every day they walk into work, it's innovation. It's a little bit more murky inside corporate land. If you're saying 10.0s are sophistication level, the only thing I'd say on this is I guess the mandate that companies have right now in terms of being out of business, like you could be out of business in 3 years. So whether you're starting at 1, 3, 5, the distance between going from 1 to 9, and I guess we may get into a few examples later, can be really small nowadays. It doesn't take you 2, 3 years to become a great organization. In some examples, it can take you as little as 6 months, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what are some of these things then that companies need to avoid or use for a breakthrough, or what's really important? What's going to get them there? What's going to get them past that point where they fail and the company dies?
Anybody taking that?
Go for it, Sean.
Or is that
Well, I mean, we've mentioned one already, which is just I find companies that have a really good, intimate understanding of what their customers want, just natively understand. Samantha, you worked at Starbucks, right? I think to a second, they probably know if somebody spends more than 90 seconds in line, they're probably going to be upset. So what do we do to not have that happen? That type of really good understanding of customers is key. And I think the other thing that either gets companies in trouble or in the good space is appreciating that speed is a key criteria. Oftentimes when you look at a company's kind of like, what are we in business for and what's our North Star metrics, speed never shows up. And I think speed should be like a top 3 criteria in nearly every single company. Like if you're not moving fast, you're not moving productively. So speed and customer would be my two senses in terms of what can get company from 1 to 9.
Yeah, I also think on that, Sean, there's an element of ROI. I think attached to the outcome a lot of times is what is our return on investment? And I really think in order to be innovative, sometimes you just need to take that off the table. Try different things, use it as an opportunity to learn, see what works, what doesn't work, and rather than everything being attached to a financial outcome. And I'm not saying all organizations do that, but I think the organizations that really succeed well in innovation, it's just because they've taken a risk and they've tried. And where they might end up going to, Maggie, to your point around, they might start off with a version 1 and that's not the answer. But when they're learning from it, next thing you know, they've tried a version 2 or gone back to a version 1, and they create this beautiful dance that by the end, they've got a product that actually is important to their customer and is, helpful for their business. But I do think the financial outcome needs to be removed as well sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
No silver bullet.
What's that?
I said there is no silver bullet. Everybody is looking for it, but if we can find it, we'll all be rich.
It's kind of like fitness, Samantha, right? Everybody wants washboard abs. There's only like 2% of the population that can have them. So
exactly.
Too bad sometimes.
Well, I'm going to invent 5-minute abs. So
there's some good pills you can buy online for those abs.
Oh man, taking the shortcut.
All right.
One of the ones that I think is a bit something to think about is when you're looking at your customers, if you are segmenting them and then maybe noticing who's not your customer, what is it that you can do to reach them in a quick and nimble way? For example, I know about a designer who realized that women weren't wearing bicycle helmets because hair and looking sweaty and all that stuff. So she actually designed bike helmets with the existing capabilities of the existing bike manufacturer to just feminize them a little bit to address these things. And voila, whole new market created.
So simple, right? Oh, so brutally simple innovation can be sometimes, but so smart.
And maybe that's part of it too, is we just need to be a little bit more basic and simple. I think sometimes as individuals and as organizations, we overcomplicate things.
Yeah, we're definitely way overcomplicating things. So in terms of wrapping up here, just sort of get your final thoughts on, you know, some people go to the gym, others walk dogs, you know, go out and do some gardening. What's the best way innovators can stay fit? You know, are there practices, habits, routines, structures, talents? What kind of gym equipment do we need?
I can jump in.
Start please, Samantha.
So I don't know that there's one particular thing, but I believe that there's, I call it bubble jumping, where I think every day when we're in our organizations, we're in our friend groups, we're, you know, using social media, we're very limited in what we're getting, and the information that we're getting is probably pretty consistent, and it's not opening us up to new ideas or new ways of thinking. And I really believe that for anybody to be innovative, you constantly need to challenge your thinking and really kind of sense check what's working for you, what isn't working for you, what do you know, and more importantly, what don't you know? So I think the gym almost needs to be you need to go to a different gym every single day, or you need to get out of your mindset and to reframe your perspectives. I try to go to a lot of different conferences. I try to go to some topics and talks that make me feel uncomfortable and aren't necessarily my beliefs. And I think that's really important. But I also think, like any athlete, you need to have a good coach. And one of the things that I truly believe is, I think as individuals, whether you're an individual contributor or you're a leader, if you can hone your coaching skills and the ability to give and receive feedback, I think that's critical to success. So I think if you can get a new gym and make sure that you've got a few different coaches and you're improving your coaching skills, you could be set up to be a really good innovation athlete.
So don't get like a New Year's resolution gym membership, but get a full year gym membership, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe even get 5 gym memberships.
All right, Maggie, what do you think? What do we need to kind of continue innovation?
Well, I wish I could say something more smart than Samantha, but I think you're like the poster person for strategic foresight and futures with everything that you just said. I would only do a yes and, which is using the words assumption is far healthier than validation. And when you're talking about going to different gyms and getting a different test every day, or workout every day, one kind of fitness analogy is you're going down a river you've never been down before in a kayak. Do you want someone to help you know that around the bend is going to be rapid waters or calm waters? The reality is you don't really know, because the weather makes impacts and trees fall, and so the river's never the same twice. And if you have someone who gives you advanced preparation for that, you can't see the river, but at least when the water's coming, you've got the skills to be nimble.
And just make sure that you're not going to go down Niagara Falls either.
Yeah.
Sean, your turn.
Well, I'm going to do another yes and, because that seems to be the trend, and we're all really good collaborative people here. Similar to the point about joining a whole bunch of different gyms. Dublin had a really good study on innovation, where Dublin's got these 10 types of innovation, and most innovators tend to focus on their product and product systems. And meanwhile, they looked at what's the biggest return you can get, and it's always business models, how you set up your supply chains, or the customer experience. Like, how do you, to Maggie's example, how do you just tweak your existing product and turn it into something that's very acceptable for a different customer base? So I think, I hate leg. I do like yoga, actually, but I only like hot yoga. I probably should be going to like other forms of fitness just to get the total body workout. And I think similar to innovators, they focus too much of their time on product and product innovation, and should have a much bigger palette of, going to a whole bunch of different gyms.
That sounds tiring though. Going to all those gyms though.
Hey,
sounds like
if innovation was easy, we'd all be doing it well, right?
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. All right. Well, thank you so much. On that note, let's close up. Thanks for watching and listening to the Wikibrands Collective. Go to wiki-brands.com/webcast for more episodes like this on some of our other amazing think tank discussions. Thank you so much, Samantha. Thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you again, Sean. And my name is Doyle Buehler. If you learned something, please like and share, or simply ask us a question and we'll respond as quickly as possible. We have some amazing shows coming up as well on Wikibrands Collective Webcast. Take a look at wikibrands.com/webcast to find out more. And one quick last thing, how can we actually get in touch with you, Maggie?
Best way is LinkedIn, or you can look on Twitter for myself or my company, Futures Present.
Perfect. And I've got your full name up there, and we'll probably have a link in the video descriptions as well. And Samantha, how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is probably through LinkedIn. But you can also send me an email at s.yarwood@me.com.
Perfect. And Sean?
Wikibrands, wiki-brands.com. And particularly on this one, if you look up something online called Corporate Innovation Playbook, we are trying to diagnose 50 different questions about this very topic. So if you want to contribute and join our discussion and answer a survey, it's all there too.
And what was the URL again?
I guess it's wiki-brands.com, and I'm gonna guess here. You got me on the spot here, but I'm gonna guess it's Corporate Innovation Playbook if I'm being literal.
Yeah, I think that's the one we had. Yeah. All right, excellent. All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you to all our viewers, and we will see everybody online.
Thank you, Doyle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doyle.